wondering how I got into this mix.
I'm very happy I could see you looking at a class of opportunity, of beautiful beings, and my name is Alone, featuring company, and I'm so happy you could accompany me on this music train that's gonna be amazing. And I love your faces, and I love the little kids too, because without you there would be no us for this to be something we do. And it's year 2 and I'm kind of new, but they gave me hope, and this is Derrick Broze.
That was the coolest introduction I've ever received. Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you. All right, well, yeah, it is great to see all these beautiful faces and see everybody kind of gathered in one place. I think we've all been scattered throughout this beautiful land throughout the last couple days. And I'm excited to talk to you guys. I am apparently afforded the label keynote speaker, so we'll see what that means and how that turns out. But I'm here to share a message and to talk to you guys for the next 45 minutes, hour? How long? Hour? Cool. All right, and I got some different ideas and things that I want to share. First, I want to say thanks to everybody who heard me talk a little bit earlier in the illumination station, I believe. Everybody who's hanging out, thank you for that, sharing some time with me. And I want to talk about some different things than I shared earlier, so this will be new information to all of us, even hopefully to those of us who've heard me speak before. But before we do that, let's go ahead and start out with a nice howl. Everybody here howl with me, because I know that we're happy. Are you guys happy to be here? Are you very excited to be here? You're like, oh, this is a beautiful place, right? So let's let it out. Let's take a nice deep breath together. Everybody who can hear my voice throughout this forest, if you can hear my voice, take a deep breath, and then when you release it, let out a nice howl. You can't howl and not feel better afterwards. Like, it just doesn't work that way. So I like to start my talks off that way. It helps me breathe a little bit, and we get to connect for a moment, and that's important. So I'm going to share some ideas, and before we do that, I want to tell you guys a little bit about myself and what I do, how I found myself right here, and getting to connect with other friends and family from just a different part of this beautiful planet. So my name is Derrick Broze. I'm based in Houston. I've been in Houston my whole life. I am 33 years old. I'm a freelance investigative journalist. I work for different independent media sites, and I have my own website, and I have a radio show in Houston, and I've been involved in activism for the last 10 years in Houston. I founded a group called the Houston Freethinkers in 2010, and we've been able to do lots of great things similar to the work of Grass and other groups we've met up here and around the country. And it's sort of swallowed my whole life. This is all I do now. I've been able to have the beauty and the opportunity to do what I love to do, which is to try to find solutions for the problems and things I see in the world, right? And started out just kind of waking up using the internet as a tool, watching documentaries, reading certain books, and then my whole world changed, right? I couldn't really look backwards, and I just continued forward, started trying to find solutions, and it led to this activist community. It's led to journalism. I didn't go to school for journalism. It just sort of came through my activism and my natural curiosity, and have been able to survive doing this for the last few years and doing what I love and travel the country and reporting on important stories like Standing Rock. I was in Standing Rock 3 different times, and several other important struggles. Definitely indigenous struggles are close to my heart. And doing these important issues, covering important stories, talking to other activists, meeting other great people, and to the point now where I get to come do these kind of events and speak to you guys. And I'm actually currently in the middle of a break of a 58-city national tour. We've been touring the U.S. It's called the Liberate Your Mind Tour. We've already toured 2 weeks across Texas, 3 weeks across the Midwest, and I just completed 4 weeks across, excuse me, the West Coast and the Northwest. Now, next month we'll be spending 3 weeks traveling all through the East Coast and spreading a lot of the ideas that I'm going to share with you guys tonight. So that's what I've been up to now, right? But I want to talk a little bit about how I got to this point and help you understand why I talk about the ideas that I talk about. My website, my books, and sort of, I guess you could say, movement to some degree is the conscious resistance. I'm going to talk about what that means. And more recently, I'm referring to it as holistic activism. We're going to talk about that and what those words actually mean, and how this differs from other forms of activism and other forms of solutions that we see presented to us. But before we get there, I want to tell you about my actual awakening story, as some people put it, right? When it comes to politics and activism, I started waking up in 2009, 2010. I started reading these books and going to the library and just, educating myself and really learning that a lot of things I was taught throughout my life were a lie, which I think many of us kind of realize as we make our way through this beautiful, crazy life. We realize that we've been misinformed by different people that maybe we take as authorities, parents, friends, teachers, principals, different adults that as a child we sort of blindly believe, wow, these giant people know what's going on. And then you get old enough and realize nobody knows what the heck's going on, and life's a little bit more fun that way, I think. And once you can kind of get over that whole illusion. But before I got to that point and started questioning those things, I was very much struggling, and in a number of ways. I spent most of my earliest years very depressed, and by the age of 8 years old, I tried to kill myself, and between that age and about 17, I'd had 3 different suicide attempts. And this was something that I dealt with at a very young age, namely because of, now I can kind of reflect back, but at the time I wasn't very aware of it. But it was mainly related to my relationship, or lack of relationship, to my birth father, who has been in prison my entire life. And I grew up visiting him in prison, some of my earliest memories are being in prisons, kind of trying to figure out as a little kid, like, why do we have to go behind this place with a giant razor wire, and why, how come we have to see him through glass, or how come the visits are only an hour long, or why does he have a black eye, or, all these kind of different things. And as a child trying to integrate these and understand, and in a lot of ways, I put some of that blame on myself, and at a very young age just started to integrate that, and that led to a lot of negative self-programming, a lot of self-blame, what I thought was hatred of myself. At a very young age, my earliest memories were some pretty heavy, dark stuff for such a little kid. And by the time I got into being a teenager, I became very self-destructive. And then by the time I got out of high school, I discovered drugs and I discovered drinking. And I was like, holy crap, I feel amazing. This is what I've been looking for. This is the answer that I've been searching for. This is where enlightenment is at, apparently. Obviously, I quickly learned that that wasn't the answer. But at the time, 2005, around that time, a couple years after I got out of high school, I'd been going from being the dude who was taking like 25 beer bongs a night, like puking all over myself, to going to taking Xanax bars for, months at a time, just totally being blacked out, and then taking ecstasy for months at a time till my serotonin was gone and I was walking around like a zombie, couldn't feel anything, and just hopping from one thing to the next, to the one to the next, until eventually I got hooked on crystal meth. And in January 2005, I tried crystal, and then within 10 and a half months, I was in prison. And I basically, it just grabbed a hold of me, and then very quickly I lost my job, had some people move in with me, we started just selling drugs full time, and it became like that was my 24-hour reality. While some of you are kind of going to the house where you party at, I was the one living in it 24/7 and just still lost in that depression and all that really confusion and trying to understand. And I couldn't quite grasp that, hey, maybe taking a bunch of drugs is going to make things a little more confusing. But it took me a little while to figure that one out. And so I'm just kind of lost in all this stuff going on, right? Still trying to dig through that relationship with my father, who continued to go in and out of prison and make certain promises. I'll be there for this, I'll be there for that. And then again, integrating that. And when I was a teenager, I took that pain that I felt at a very young age as a child. And it's kind of like in Star Wars, they talk about the dark side. Well, I felt like my anger made me strong. And so I became this person that was very much projecting outwardly all the time. I could talk crap about everything in the world and just project and point my finger at everything in the world, but don't dare look at me and, look at what I'm covering up or masking, And I got pretty good at that, just being the dude that just talked crap all day and was just covering up a lot of pain, right? And then all of a sudden the drugs just kind of took over, and yeah, really quickly I couldn't get myself off of crystal, and I would even be around people who I was partying with, and they would say, you don't even look like you're enjoying yourself. And I'd say, I don't know if I am. I just can't stop. I feel like I'm just kind of stuck in this cycle. And of course, some of the things that come along with being involved in that sort of lifestyle is you tend to burn bridges and lose relationships. And, especially, I'm already kind of a thin dude. When I got arrested, I weighed 105 pounds, and I was, I'd lost a lot of weight very quickly. So friends and family could tell, something was up with me. I was not, it's kind of hard to be, twacked out on crystal meth and walk around and nobody notice. But you think you hide it well. And so I had to go through this really intense experience. I ended up living in what turned into a crack in a meth apartment with another dude who I thought was also trying to get off these drugs. I told him hey, I'm really trying to get myself out of this situation, because it got to the point where I'm I'm like sleeping on the street, breaking into storage units to try to find a place to sleep at night, you know, just doing all kinds of crazy things just to survive, and being around people with, you know, people getting shot around me, like, because of just drug dealers that I was getting associated with, and really just the whole time, like, asking myself, like, what the heck am I doing? It felt like I was just watching a movie play out, but it was like, wait, this is my life, and like, I'm just sort of letting all these things happen. So by the time I decided I was really ready to change, I thought I was moving into this apartment, that it was going to be towards a good change, and it ended up being, turned into a crack house basically. And everybody there ended up like using crack and selling crack and all this stuff. And the day I decided like I was done, the people that were there were at least respectful enough that when I said, hey, please don't offer me anything anymore because I'm really trying to stop. And the dude's like, yeah, me too. Yeah, tomorrow. So, I mean, I was dealing with people who were very much in this life, and I decided I was done. I remember, I will say I do credit cannabis to helping me out, because cannabis definitely is a medicine at the time, because of, like, I mean, if you've ever taken Adderall, it's only a slight molecule away from crystal meth, so you've kind of already tried it, you know, yourself, just to be honest. But if you've ever had too much Adderall or something like that, or you took too much to try to get through your studies, or you had too much cups of coffee, you understand how your anxiety can kind of make you a little bit jittery. So my anxiety was shot after months and months of just doing so much of this, and I was just, you know, I was in a very weird place, and cannabis was helping me kind of get away from that. So I remember the day I decided I was done, I was sitting in the corner of this room, and I'm like sitting on this chair, and I'm just smoking my bong, and I'm watching all the nonsense around me, and it's like, okay, it's been one day. All right, it's been 2 days. And then by day 7, I was just pretty much strong enough to just say, all right, I'm leaving. And I just got up. My car had been outside the whole time. I just really didn't have the willpower to leave, and I really didn't have anywhere to go either because I burned so many bridges. But I got up and I left, and I decided I was done, and I just left. And I got myself sober off crystal. And it was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was a necessary thing. But I was still stuck in that mindset. I got away from the drugs and all that, but I was still surrounding myself with all those same people. And my story is kind of one of those cliche things. If I went and did one more deal, because I knew I could make money really quick, I needed to make money, and I went and picked up some crystal, and then I ended up getting pulled over, and then that was it. Like, I got pulled over, and car got searched, and I'd never really been in major trouble before that, but I knew, like, I'm probably not going home today. And so when I got arrested, and I go to the system, and I ended up getting sentenced to a year in an institution in Houston, a Texas state institution. So between 2005, November 2005, and October 2008, I ended up doing 18 months behind bars in different Texas state institutions. I did a year, and then I got out, and I was out for about 5 months, and then I did 3 more months, and I was out for a year, and I did 4 more months. So it was kind of a back and forth process, and I felt like I was learning a little bit more each and every time, because when I got in there, once I accepted, because you have to understand, like, if you've been in a situation where you feel truly powerless, then you might understand the feeling I'm describing here, because when you get a sentence like that and you realize there's nothing my lawyer can do, my mother can do, my girlfriend can do, my friends, I can cry about it all day over here, I can stay on the phone all day calling family and friends, no matter what you do or say, you're looking at the calendar and you're like, I'm not going home till next year, you know, till this like thing. That's powerless, that's feeling power. That's when you in a sense, it's powerless because you realize you're powerless to get yourself out of there. But then what I realized, there was also a lot of power in that situation, because now I had time to work on those things I've been dealing with my whole life. And that's what I chose to do, is to start using that space to ask myself, like, holy crap, I've been mad at my dad my whole life for being in prison for his drug addiction, his problems, and now here I am turning 21 in prison, you know. I got arrested the week before I turned 21. And it was, you know, it was really like a kick in the chest, and I was very mad at myself at first, but I decided to use the time as an opportunity to try to see what led me there, right? And to start to peel back some of those layers and look at my pain related to this relationship with my birth father, and I started just journaling every day. I mean, that really saved my life. And then I started writing letters to him and just, again, opening up those wounds and trying to dig back deeper and understand where this was coming from and what was leading me to this place. Because ultimately, I believe in a truly free society. People will be free to consume whatever substances that they choose, even if we disagree with that, as long as they're not infringing upon anybody else's rights. And I think that includes some of these substances that are not so helpful and not so pretty. You know, I say that as somebody who's been addicted to some of them, because I think that's what freedom's about treating people. Because it's the truth of the matter, it wasn't really the drugs, as I had issues that were the root of this, right? Because I can look back in my life and see me displaying other unhealthy behaviors. The drugs just were the kind of the symptom of the deeper root cause, right? So most people who are abusing drugs have deeper issues that they're the reason they're running to drugs. I was definitely self-medicating, right? So what I needed was somebody to talk to, somebody to communicate. I didn't need to be thrown in a cage. So I don't credit going to prison at all for changing my life. I want to make that clear. It was a conscious decision on my part to use that time to do something different. And then one day, on a Saturday when I was in prison, in the Houston section of the newspaper, they have a religion section. And on Saturdays, they quote different traditions. And so they have like a quote from the Bible, a quote from the Quran, a quote from the Dhammapada, which is the Buddhist Bible, sometimes known as the Buddhist Bible. And I wish I could tell you what verse it was or what saying it was, because that would make this story that much cooler, but I don't remember what it was. I just remember it struck me so, immediately that I had to go find out more. And I started to get my grandmother and my girlfriend to send me chapter a day into prison of the Dhammapada, which is just this collection of verses from the Buddha. And my grandma started sending me books on meditation, and like specifically Zen meditation is where I first started. And I started meditating while I was in prison, and it was honestly probably the most appropriate place for that. And now, since then, I've learned about there's meditation programs in schools and in prisons that are having a lot of powerful effects, and to me it's fairly obvious. But at the time I didn't know anything about that. I kind of vaguely knew about meditation, but I started to learn more and more, and I started to meditate every day in there. And when you're in prison, it's a place filled with fear and a lot of ego, because what you have is what I consider very low-level, primitive thinking, right? You look like me, you're the same color as me, so we're all going to hang out, right? This type of people are going to hang out together, this type of people are going to hang out. And I had people come up to me and say, hey, you can't be talking to that person. We don't talk to those people. And I was like, hey man, I'm not with any gang or anybody, I'm just here by myself doing my thing, right? And that's the sort of mentality, just to let you know, like that I'm dealing with. So I'm sitting in my bunk late at night, and I'm getting in lotus position, trying to meditate, and I hear, what the fuck is that guy doing over there? You see that weirdo over there? Just whatever wisp, I'm just like, all right, just stay centered, stay focused, and really it was probably the most appropriate environment. It helped me realize okay, there's going to be distractions that come along with life. Like anytime you're meditating, I was meditating in the woods over here earlier, and there's helicopters going over, and it's just just let it pass you, just keep yourself centered. And I learned that in that place, and it probably saved my life, and it helped me get through that. And it really was the start, though, of this change. And all the things that I talked about that I was doing now with activism and journalism and speaking, all of that, before I ever was becoming aware of the political system and the corruption in both the corporate and state system, my journey started here, started in prison, started at the beginning of uncovering these layers and starting to heal my wounds and to start to dig deeper into these things. It's been a beautiful, painful, sometimes I think people there's this misconception. I feel like social media is a big part of it, because we all want to portray something, right? Healing is not a pretty social media post. Healing is a difficult, painful, tears involved, pushing through stuff you don't want to face kind of process, right? We wanted to portray it as oh, it's this, we're running through fields of sunflowers and whatever, I don't know, things like that. But it's really oh my God, do I want to look at that? No, if I look at that pain, that part of my life, it's going to be difficult. I'm going to have to face it and cry a little bit, and yeah, and then you come through and you feel better afterwards, right? Or at least you start getting through that process, and it's important. And so this is ongoing for me. I mean, I'll just be real with you guys. This is it's a continuous process. Actually, my birth father just passed away about a month and a half ago. He died from a drug overdose. He still dealt with that. He'd been in and out of prison my entire life, and the last couple years we had a chance to really connect, and it was a real role reversal where I'm giving him advice, dude, I know he's been in and out of prison so much in his life. He was pretty institutionalized. It seemed like it was easier for him to go somewhere where he knew when he was going to be fed and when he had to go to bed, and all his needs were going to be taken care of and that kind of thing. But he saw what I was doing and saw my work, and I was just trying to I know that helping him heal is a part of my healing, right? Because he's got his own pain from my grandfather. I can see this generation. This is the thing about the Broze family, the men specifically. There's 3 or 4 generations of drug abuse, alcohol abuse in prison. And so when I ended up there, I was like, oh great, here I saw I saw this vision of two paths, and one of them was like, okay, continue the Broze family tradition, right? And the other one was like, well, maybe we can do something different, because my great-grandfather hung himself in prison. He had abused my grandpa. My grandfather had my birth father selling drugs at a very young age, and it was just this ongoing thing. So by the time I came into the picture, this dude already had all of his own pain that had nothing to do with me, you know. But the wounds do pass down, and this is a concept we'll talk about in a few minutes, epigenetics, you know, that the changes that happen to us, the various trauma and stresses that happen to us can be imprinted on our DNA and then passed down into the following generations. So we're absolutely dealing with the trauma in our lives of past generations, that things we may be totally unaware of, different behaviors and idiosyncrasies that we may have, may be coming from a place down to the genetic level that has been passed down to us. So when I started to realize these things, I saw that, okay, if I make a change, if I don't pass this down to, say, you know, my children or my nieces or nephews, and if we start to heal these wounds, then I could sort of send that healing back, right, and help out my grandfather and my father. Unfortunately, you know, he passed on to the next stage of life, but now it's up to me to understand that I can continue to heal those wounds, right, for my own self, so that I don't repeat the same mistakes, because I've realized more and more, even more recently, we were having is Andy in here? I was having a conversation with Andy, I think. It may have been Andy, somebody recently last night, and they reminded me that so many of us struggle for, maybe not perfection, but we struggle to be the people that we know that we can be, right? This sort of vision that we see of ourselves, that we ascribe to, right? But oftentimes we don't want to admit when we stumble, you know? Somebody was saying to me something like, hey, sometimes when I'm alone, like, I might step out of my awesome vegan diet and I go eat some fast food or something, and, like, you know, then they have, like, guilt about it, and they feel like, damn, I can't tell anybody about that, like, I gotta keep that to myself. So then we're all going around, like, parading, putting on a charade, right? Like, screw it, dude, every now and then we make mistakes, you know, and it's important for us to acknowledge and to love that part of ourselves, too. And this is, you know, one of the kind of lessons that have been coming to me recently, because I've been spending some time acknowledging some of my faults, you know, which is important, and noticing some of my behaviors that I realize, okay, well, you know what, I can't just blame everything on this relationship and say, well, it's because of this person wasn't there, or this person did this, so this is why I do this. No, I have to take personal responsibility, right, and say, well, these different things may be affecting me, but ultimately I have the choice in how I choose to live my life, right? Ultimately, I'm responsible for my actions, right? So I say all this and share all this information so that you understand that why I call my work the conscious resistance or holistic activism, which for me, the conscious resistance, that phrase, I'll just define that. It's the realization, the understanding, the awareness, the recognition that the struggle for a more free and ethical world is not going to come from only confronting physical institutions of power, be that corporate or state power, but also by an understanding and working on our own, what I call our internal tyrant, which is our doubts, fears, and insecurities that each of us possess from things that we pick up in our own past. I don't care who you are, how many followers you have online, or what you portray yourself as. Each of us deal with different issues in different ways. And some things might seem really silly and trite when you see it in somebody else. You're like, wow, that person's so amazing. I can't believe they're insecure about this silly little thing. But it might be paralyzing to them, right? So we're affected different ways by different things because we have different paths. But by choosing to focus on those things and doing that deeper healing, I know that it's possible for us to move past the current systems that do not reflect our values and principles or the direction that we want the world to go. By choosing to work on ourselves as well as opting out of current systems that do not align with our values and then putting our energy towards the creation of new systems, we're helping move the ball forward, essentially, right? So that's what, to me, the conscious one without the other, right? If we implement some of the best laid plans, and I've got a lot of ideas, I put them into books, and, you know, obviously I put them there because I think that they're valuable, right? Well, let's say we follow those to a T, or we followed somebody else's plan to a T. If we do that, if we work in the physical realm, and we opt out of systems that don't serve us, and we start building more localized, decentralized food production and permaculture forests and all these great things, we only focus on that physical aspect, but we completely ignore our internal self and our internal battle. We may succeed to some degree, and it may take a generation or two, but I believe we'll cycle back and end up creating the same systems that we're opposing right now. I'm a student of history and a student of revolutions, and nearly every single revolutionary has become the thing that they fought, because they forget that the means that you use to get to your end goal matter, right? I want to be consistent from beginning to end, right? And if I believe in a better world, well, I can't use force to get there, right? And I can't use violence to get there, I would say. And we have to recognize that. So even if we implement these best laid plans, if we haven't done the internal work, there are still going to be people who are dealing with their trauma. And that trauma leads some people to try to control and dominate other people. Be that via corporations or be governmental positions, politicians, etc. People will still try to dominate, to hurt each other, to use institutions. And I don't know that we can ever get to a utopian, perfect world, and I'm not really after that, but I'm trying to head towards a better direction. And I recognize, as my indigenous brothers and sisters have recognized for generations, that we have to think about the 7th generation. We have to think about the future. We have to start thinking forward, forward thinking, not only seeing what's right in front of us. And that means recognizing that, unfortunately, the solution is not as simple as throwing a brick through a window or pressing a button and voting every 4 years or every 2 years. That the solution is actually a lot more difficult, and the solution might not even come to fruition within our lifetimes, because it's a generational change. True change has to come from within each of us. It can't be forced through a government mandate or through some corporate program. It has to come when each individual within their own hearts and minds recognize that change is necessary, and then they start taking appropriate steps within their own lives to say, I'm not going to support that system anymore. I'm going to find another way. I'm not going to endorse that via my money. I'm going to start examining all my different life choices and looking to see where I'm supporting the systems that I claim to oppose and that I stand against. Otherwise, we're just talking. We're not actually going to do anything. And so that's the unfortunate thing, that the solution depends on us, that we might not actually see it come to fruition in our lifetime. But if we, again, are thinking of the 7th generation, and we start doing the difficult work now, and start using emerging technologies that are available to us that offer a chance at decentralization, at individuals becoming the master of themselves, empowering themselves, and stepping away from centralized systems, then we're going to lay the groundwork that will help the coming generations have options, have choices to not have to participate in these systems. Right now, those of us who want to try to exit from these things, like say, okay, well, did you guys hear the news that on August 9th, a school bus full of children got bombed by Saudi bombs provided by U.S. funding, made by Lockheed Martin? It was a school bus, 50 people killed, 40 of them were children. There's a video that's on the internet of the inside of the bus right as it hits. Those are the kind of things that you support through the income tax and through those sort of things that they take involuntarily. That they take involuntarily, and that they will lock you up if you choose to fight against and to try to say, I don't believe in that. That goes against my values, my beliefs, my principles. I will not support that system. Well, eventually they'll come take more money from you, or eventually if you push hard enough, they'll come put you in a cage and say that you've broken their laws, right? These are the sort of systems that we're currently dealing with, and those of us who try to circumvent that and find ways around that because we don't want to participate in those things, we risk our lives, we risk our very well-being. I want to give these coming generations an option, a choice, to decide where their funds, where their energy, their livelihood goes. I believe that we each are powerful, beautiful individual beings who own ourselves and are capable of organizing our own affairs and coming together with other free, powerful, beautiful people to organize communities and to organize in a way that doesn't include top-down power, and that gives each individual the freedom to choose how they want to create their own path, right? But we don't currently have that option, and it's up to us to start thinking in this forward-thinking way, and thinking, what are we actually doing to create change in the world, right? So one of the things I've been kind of talking about lately is, before the internet, think about individuals who, like, everybody here comes for different reasons. Different people came for the music, maybe some came for the community, others came to, hear a talk, or just to be out in nature, just to meet new people. Everybody's got a different purpose, but for some reason we all find ourselves right here. We're all paying attention, we're tuned in, we're on the same vibration right now, and in this moment we are all together, right? We came here for different reasons, but we came here because we feel like maybe that outside world doesn't provide the experiences we're looking for. So we got to create the spaces where we can have the experiences we want, right? And before the internet, it was very difficult for people like us to find each other. Maybe you randomly meet somebody and you realize like, whoa, this is another weirdo that cares about things in the world and looks like me and acts like me. I can actually have a friend, right? And then the internet came along and it's like, wow, we can start meeting people. You meet friends from all over the world with different, similar music interests and concerns about the environment and whatever your causes and your issues are, right? We start finding each other. And then, now that we've found each other, we start creating our own events and creating our own festivals and meeting in the physical world and coming together and it's a beautiful experience. So what do we do now? Now that we know that we're not alone, After hosting meetings in Houston for 8 or 9 years, I'm in the middle of my second tour. We did a 45-city tour last year, a 58-city tour this year. I've spoken in Portugal, Spain, Mexico, Costa Rica. Every single place I've gone, every single meeting I've held, somebody tells me, I feel alone. I feel like I can't talk to my parents. I can't talk to my kids. I can't talk to my sister. I can't talk to my brother. They don't care. They think I'm crazy. My friends have outcasted me because I have concerns about these sort of things. So many people out there feel alone. And then now that we've connected with each other, we're starting to realize, hey, we're not alone, right? Wow, the internet has helped us realize we're here. Then we come together, people put on sweetgrass and sageburn and other beautiful events. We connect for a couple of days, and then what do we do after that? Because I tell you this, my friends, if we don't do anything different, if we just go back home to wherever home is and back to work and back to our Babylon lives, then when we meet again for next year's sweetgrass and sageburn, nothing will have changed. The problems, the issues we see in the world will still be there. It's about us choosing awareness, choosing to be mindful and say, you know what? I really don't like that every time I put my money in these banks, they go invest it into different things that I have no say in. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but fractional reserve banking, this allows when you put your money into a bank, they only have to keep about 10% of it. The other 90% they can invest it wherever they want, right? So you give them $1,000 to hold from your paycheck. They hold on to 100 of it. 900 of it gets invested in all kinds of different places. So you might be funding the next Dakota Access Pipeline. You might be funding the next surveillance state project. You might be funding some things you like. But the point is you have no say. By participating in that system, by choosing to give them your money for convenience, for interest, for whatever you choose, and this is not a judgment, this is just the reality, then you condone things that you may not like, that might go against your very principles. And in that way, you're working against yourself, right? I haven't used a bank in 10 years because, well, I mean, I didn't really have a political answer in the beginning. I just didn't really feel good about it. Then the more I started to wake up to issues, I was like, wait, you're telling me these are the same banks that robbed the American people in 2008? And then when they told the people that these banks were so big and so important that if we didn't hold them up, the economy was going to fail. So what did they do? They took more money from the people and then gave it to those banks. Like, those are the same banks you want me to give my money? Oh wait, and then you look further back in history and you see all these different financial crises involving these banks, and every time, what do? They buy up the smaller banks, and that's what we saw happen in 2008 as well. And these same banks I'm just focusing on this one aspect, but we could go into, you got to look at your health. Like, so the type of food you consume as well as the source of your food. The type of money you use as well as where you spend that money. The type of relationships you keep. The way you communicate with other people in your relationships. You know, I know a lot of different activists who can tell you, you know, the daily news of what Donald Trump's up to, or what this political party's up to, or what this person's up to, or they got political philosophy, they know it like the back of their hand, right? But maybe in their personal relationships, they treat people like crap. Or maybe despite all that knowledge, in their diet, they're eating unhealthy, but they're also supporting industries that go against the very things they believe in, right? So it's not about trying to be perfect, but this is what the holistic perspective is about. So I'm going to take a moment to define that. This is a term that unfortunately gets thrown about all over the place, but it has a meaning. So I've seen everything from holistic gardening to holistic sex. I was at the pet store recently and I saw holistic dog food. And I mean, all kinds of things, but it actually has a meaning. So let's define that. Holistic, it comes from the philosophy of holism. And holism is a philosophy that is about studying systems in whole pieces rather than breaking them down individually. So let me give you some examples. Holistic ecology is the study of the entire planet and humanity, the animals, and all the various ecosystems as one system. It's a certain way of studying a subject, and it really changes the outcomes of what you get. Holistic psychology is about studying the whole mind. Most people are familiar with holistic medicine. At the heart of it, that means you're looking at the whole body, not just treating the symptom, right? So when I talk about holistic activism, what I'm describing is an individual who is not only taking assessment of the situation, like looking at the world and identifying the problems you see and the things you would like to improve. Because what typically happens, what I see with activists is, so you watch a documentary, or you read an article, or somebody comes and tells you something, and the next thing you know, you're just, all of a sudden you've leveled up and your awareness has just been raised, and you're like, they're doing what to dolphins in Japan? Oh my God, I gotta start getting petitions signed, and you start doing all this research, or maybe you're like, what? Monsanto's doing what to my food supply? You start being concerned about a topic, right? You do all the research, you watch all the documentaries, before you know it, you know who you hold responsible, you're pointing fingers, it's okay, it's them, it's Monsanto's, oh, it's the Rothschilds, oh, it's the capitalists, you got your worldview figured out, right? and you know who you hold responsible, and you go out in the streets and you march and you protest and you try to bring them down. And there's nothing wrong with that, because those sort of things can lead to new connections with new people, and also it's important to express yourself. And it does feel good the first time you're out there and you're like on a bullhorn, you're like, you yell something random and you're just, yeah, I felt good. I don't know if they're gonna care, but I felt good. So, you know, that's what typically will happen with activism. Like two examples of this: the March Against Monsanto, and a couple of years ago there was these really big rallies against the Federal Reserve System, the banking system. And these activists were spending a lot of energy and money and time to go out there and march around different parts of the city to try to raise awareness about the issues they had with Monsanto, or, you know, trying to save the bees and different things like that. And in Houston, we partnered with the local March Against Monsanto group to try to see if after the march, we could get everybody to go to the community farm called the Last Organic Outpost. So he said, well, after we're done marching around, let's all go learn how to grow our own organic food, right? That's the goal here, right? And it probably wouldn't surprise you that of the 400 or 500 people that were at the march, we had less than a handful show up at the garden, because they're not thinking holistically. They understand going out and pointing a finger and expressing themselves, and after they're done marching, they even go out and they get some Mexican food and they eat some GMO corn chips as a celebration, and they don't see how they're working against themselves, right? And the goal then would be to say, okay, here's the problem, identify the problem. Now, how am I contributing to that, right? So a holistic activist not only points their fingers outwardly and can see the problems, but they take a moment to turn those fingers back around and say, well, how am I contributing to the system? Okay, well, am I buying Roundup? Because that's going to support Monsanto. Am I supporting any businesses that are buying their traditional crops or products? Am I giving any of my money to these institutions? Have I started my own backyard garden yet? Or have I started volunteering at a community farm? Have I even gone to a farmer's market to buy directly from a farmer that's not using pesticides and supporting the things that I'm against? And if the answer is no, then I don't know how you're going to get to that goal. And we need to start thinking in practical terms if we're ever going to actually achieve change. You need to be able to identify your goals, have clear goals, be able to identify the principles first, what principles you hold dear. Now, I've kind of been mentioning a couple of them. Like one I believe is really important is the 7th generation principle, thinking about not just how our actions affect those we see right here and even those children here, but the 7 generations and beyond. But also the principle of self-ownership. I believe each of you are powerful, beautiful people that do own yourself and the fruits of your labor, and that it is wrong, immoral, unethical, impractical for me or anybody else to force you to live differently, to come infringe upon, initiate force or violence against you, as long as you're not initiating force or violence against me as well. And essentially that goes along with the golden rule that we've all been taught since we were little kids, but for some reason seem to have trouble incorporating, or at least most of us seem to live like this in our day-to-day lives. I mean, you know, we're all here voluntarily, nobody is being forced to be here, and yet we're not killing each other. We don't seem to be just waiting for them to declare, you know, it's like the movies like The Purge, they get people thinking like, yes, without government, everybody's just waiting to go club each other at night, and we're all just holding back, because if that law wasn't there, I swear I'd come after you with this bat. You know, it's just silly things like, and the other thing about that, I'm about to define anarchism. This really drives me crazy, because anytime you hear the word anarchy in the mainstream, it's things like that, the purge to anarchy. And it's like, they mean chaos and violence and destruction, because that's what they want people to think, that without these centralized systems, we're all just waiting to kill each other. There's no way we could organize our own affairs. It's not like people have done this for thousands of years before governments and religions came along. Like, we need them to keep us safe, right? So holistic is all about looking the whole picture, right? So, you know, the economy, we kind of talked about that, where your money's going, what type of money you use. For me, one of the solutions I believe that is emerging for, you know, in recent generations, just in the last 10 years, is cryptocurrency. I think that cryptocurrency offers a solution for those of us who still want to transact and trade value, which is what we're doing at the end of the day, but do it without supporting the banks, without supporting the Federal Reserve System. And it doesn't even have to be, cryptocurrency is sort of a digital version of this, but there's also barter networks. There's localized currencies. When we were in California for the tour, there was a local community that had started their own paper currency that all the businesses, you know, chose to accept, and they had it backed up by certain assets. You know, my point is, if we don't start thinking concretely about possible solutions, and we just continue to support the system, keep using the Federal Reserve note, keep using the dollar, keep using the banks, because it's convenient, because it's easy, because I don't want to think of something else, like, well, then we don't have anybody else to blame but ourselves if these institutions stay in power. And that's just the cold hard truth, right? That as long as we give them our, you know, our support, either directly or, you know, financially, then they will continue to exist. But once people start recognizing that the solution lies outside of these systems, and that we can find not only hope and value and love within ourselves and within our communities, and creating decentralized communities of the future that respect each other's individual values, but we can still continue to survive and thrive, but without having to support systems that don't, you know, contradict our values. That's what I'm all about, is trying to align our actions and our principles together. You know, and I really, again, I pull this from Buddhism. In the first book, we kind of talk about the intersections of various spiritual traditions and the philosophy of anti-authoritarianism and essentially anarchism. And Buddhism, to me, it has some tendencies in there. You know, Buddha talked about, you know, watch your thoughts, because your thoughts become your words become your actions become it's like habit, actions, and in destiny, right? It's literally that simple. I mean, we can think all day about potential solutions, but until we've spoken them out to the universe and give them power and spoken them out to our community and say, like, I'm going to do this, I want to put this into action, and then following that up with steps, then we're not going to see that. You know, I believe in the power of meditation and manifestation, but I also know that there has to be energy behind that, right? It's not just say your prayer and meditate and assume that the universe is going to take everything, you know, for you. The universe provides opportunities. This has at least been my experience. Let me speak from my experience. The universe has shown me opportunities that await, and I've had to run and grab and hustle for every single one of them, to do the things that I believe in and struggle and not be sure how to pay rent every now and then, or not sure how I'm going to get through this. But when I go to sleep at night and I know that I'm living in line with my values, and every day I'm moving closer and closer to that goal, it feels great. It feels good to know that I didn't contribute any tax money to any of those bombs, because I stopped giving them my ransom money years ago. And that feels good to know, because I don't want to support systems that don't align with my values. And instead, I want to support people through my finances, through my efforts, my energy, my being, that do align with my values. Like people like here. You know, I want to come here and work with you guys who are concerned about things in the world, who are looking for another way to live, and that we realize that we don't have to support these systems, that we actually can live in line with our values. That's what this holistic activism concept is about. My shirt here, it says holistic anarchism. I do consider myself an anarchist. It's not like a label I attach to myself all the time, but if push comes to shove politically, that's where I align. I'd like to define that too and help you understand what those terms mean together. Anarchism, as I was just saying, is not violence and destruction and chaos in the street. It's essentially the recognition that no individual should have authority over another individual. It literally means no rulers, without hierarchy, without rulers, right? And that again goes back to that self-ownership principle, that I believe that I don't have the right to rule over you and tell you what to do. I might not disagree with, you know, what you dress like, what you eat, what you smoke, who you date, etc. But that's your life, not mine. As long as you're not infringing upon me, I am not the ruler of you. I have no control over you, right? And if we could just come to that basic understanding, and because once you recognize that about yourself, you have to, you know, give everybody else that same right. And the implication of that is that we respect everybody's ability to organize their affairs and to create the world they want, and we choose to come together voluntarily when we can and to create systems that align with our values. That's what holistic activism or holistic anarchism is about. It's about lining up these positions, what we believe, what we want to see in the world, and being honest with ourselves, taking what I call an honest holistic self-assessment, and looking at different areas of our life to see if they line up, and where they don't line up, using that as motivation to push for change. It's not coming from judgment. It's not me saying, like, you're living wrong, because I was just telling Tony that one of the inconsistencies I currently see in my life, right? These are my books here, and they're all self-published, but recently Amazon bought the company, and now they're available on Amazon, which makes it really cool and convenient for people around the world. But increasingly, I have problems with the way Amazon operates. Amazon is building a facial recognition program called Recognition. They're selling to police departments all around the country. There's issues that I don't like about what they're doing. Now, I could either just complain about it all day, and I could, even write articles about it and talk about it. But then it's also kind of hypocritical for me to still use a company that's owned by Amazon, right? Well, I want to align myself, right? So now I'm going to start researching, and it might be more difficult. We might have to spend extra money. We might have to do some extra work. But screw it. I want to know that, when I'm giving you this positive message, that these people that I don't support are not making money off of it, right? That's what I'm talking about. Just trying to be holistic in those terms and looking at how we can align and be more consistent. Because plenty of times we can have goals and have ambition, but the actual achieving of these goals is going to take effort, and it's going to take thinking out practical, concrete steps to getting there. And that's what I invite you guys to do. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up and just let you guys know I have a couple of books left here. All my books, though, are available for free on my website. The 3 of them are a trilogy that kind of cover what I was talking tonight, and this is the holistic self-assessment that I was just describing. It's in book form. It asks you, who am I? What are my principles? What are my goals? What are my values? Looking at your relationships. It's got a lot of simple exercises. I also got more information about Smart Cash, which is one of the cryptos I use if anybody wants to know more about that. And I am giving some away for free for those who want to plug in and start being able to use money in a way that doesn't support these systems. And we can talk all about that later. But I want to end with a positive affirmation. It's the way that I always end my talks because, as I said earlier, I went through a lot of dark spaces and had to reclaim my mind. There's a great activist, native activist, John Trudell. He died a couple years ago. Really brilliant speaker. If you have time, if you haven't heard that name, look up John Trudell. Any talks you find from him are going to blow your mind. But he used to say that not only are these, what he called these predator class, not only are these predators, these psychopaths, mining the earth for its very resources and drilling, putting holes in the planet, but that they're mining our minds for our resource. This is the greatest resource we have right here, this headspace. The more mindful you are, the more self-aware you are, the more you can be in control of that headspace, right? Because everybody is trying to get in there. The ads on YouTube, the trailers on movies, your friends. I've been trying to get into your headspace for positive reasons. Other people, other people have more nefarious reasons, but the point is that everybody's trying to get in there. So the more in control, the more self-aware, the more centered you are, you can discern information, you can take it in and say, okay, yeah, that fits with what I know. No, I'm sorry, that doesn't, that conflicts with what I know to be true. You're not just, taking things in blindly. So just work on reclaiming that headspace. I've spent a lot of years trying to do that and undoing a lot of negative self-talk that I had, and positive affirmations were a very helpful way for me. So this is one that has served me well, and if you guys feel inclined, I invite you to repeat after me. I am powerful.
I am powerful.
Yeah, it sounds good to hear people say. Let's do that one again. I am powerful.
I am powerful.
I am beautiful.
I am beautiful.
Say it with me loud. I am free.
I am free.
Thank you guys so much.